The morning sun painted the sky orange over New Eden Colony. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped out of her small farmhouse, breathing in the fresh air. 3 months had passed since the war ended. 3 months since humanity won against the Zephyrian forces. But victory felt empty when she looked at her quiet farm. Elena had been a scientist before the war. She studied alien life forms and helped people understand different species. Now she grew vegetables and fixed broken farm equipment. The government said all aliens had to leave human space. Most did. The few who stayed behind were probably hiding in fear. She walked to her garden where tomatoes grew in neat rows. The soil was good here on New Eden, perfect for growing food that could feed the growing human population. Elena picked ripe tomatoes and put them in her basket. The work kept her hands busy, but her mind often wandered. A soft sound made her stop. Someone was at her front door, not the heavy knock of a delivery person or neighbor. This was different, weak, desperate. Elena set down her basket and walked toward the house. Through the morning mist, she could see a tall figure standing at her door. As she got closer, her breath caught in her throat. It was a Zephyrian female. Elena recognized the species immediately from her research days. The alien was tall, maybe 7 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the morning. Light. Her 4 arms hung limply at her sides. Dark robes covered most of her body, but Elena could see they were torn and dirty. The Zephyrian woman raised one thin hand and knocked again. The sound was barely audible. Elena's heart began racing. Helping enemy aliens was against the law. The military police would arrest anyone who aided former enemies. But something about this visitor made Elena move closer instead of running inside to call security. The alien woman turned, and Elena saw her face clearly for the first time. Hollow cheeks showed she hadn't eaten in days. Her large, dark eyes were filled with desperation. In her lower 2 arms, she held something small wrapped in a tattered blanket. "Please," the alien woman whispered. Her voice was like wind through leaves. "My daughter, she needs water." Elena's scientific training kicked in. She could see the alien was severely dehydrated. Her skin had lost its natural glow, and her movements were shaky. But it was the bundle in her arms that made Elena's chest tighten with emotion. A small face peeked out from the blanket. A Zephyrian child, no more than 5 years old by human standards. The little one's breathing was fast and shallow. Her tiny chest rose and fell rapidly, and her skin burned with fever. "Medicine," the alien mother continued, her English broken but understandable. "I have nothing left. Please help my baby." Elena had seen this before in her research. The child showed classic signs of Kepler's syndrome, a disease that affected young Zephyrians. Without treatment, the child would die within hours. But with the right medicine, she could be completely cured. The alien mother swayed on her feet. Her strength was almost gone. She had probably walked for days to reach this place, carrying her sick child the entire time. "I beg you," she said, and her voice broke. "She is all I have left." Elena looked into those desperate eyes and saw something that transcended species barriers. This wasn't an enemy soldier or a threat to humanity. This was a mother watching her child die, willing to risk everything for even the smallest chance of help. The alien woman's legs gave out. She collapsed onto Elena's front porch, but even as she fell, her 4 arms protected the precious bundle she carried. The child made a soft crying sound that cut through Elena's heart like a blade. Elena stared at the unconscious mother and her dying child. In the distance, she could hear the sound of military patrols doing their morning rounds. They would be here soon, checking on isolated farms like hers. If they found these aliens, both mother and child would be taken away. The mother would face trial as a war criminal. The child would likely die before any legal proceedings began. Elena's hands shook as she knelt beside the collapsed figures. The child's fever was getting worse. Every minute that passed reduced her chances of survival. Elena had the medicine needed to treat Kepler's syndrome in her old research supplies. She had the knowledge to save this little life. But helping them meant breaking federal law. It meant risking her own freedom and safety. It meant choosing between following orders and following her conscience. Elena looked at the child's face. So small, so innocent. This little one had never fired a weapon or hurt anyone. She was just a sick baby who needed help. The sound of military vehicles grew closer. Elena had maybe 10 minutes before the patrol reached her farm. 10 minutes to decide between safety and compassion. 10 minutes to choose what kind of person she wanted to be. She made her choice. Elena scooped up the unconscious mother in her arms, surprised by how light the alien woman was. Malnutrition had wasted her body to almost nothing. The child weighed barely anything at all. Elena carried them both inside her house and laid them on her living room floor. She grabbed medical supplies from her old research kit and got to work. The child needed fluids immediately. The mother needed rest and nutrition. As Elena inserted an IV line into the child's tiny arm, she wondered what she had gotten herself into. She was now harboring enemy aliens in violation of every post-war regulation. But as the little girl's breathing began to improve with treatment, Elena knew she had made the right choice. Outside, the military patrol drove past her farm without stopping. Elena watched through her window as the vehicles disappeared down the road. For now, they were safe. But she knew this was just the beginning of a much more complicated situation. The alien mother stirred slightly, her large eyes opening to look around the unfamiliar room. When she saw Elena treating her daughter, tears began flowing down her blue cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered in her musical voice. "Thank you for seeing her as a child who needed help, not as an enemy to be destroyed." Elena continued working on the IV, making sure the medication flowed properly into the small patient. "What's your name?" she asked quietly. "I am called Vera in your language," the alien mother replied. "My daughter is Luna. We have traveled so far to find someone who might help." Elena nodded, checking Luna's vital signs. The fever was already beginning to break. "Well, Vera, you found the right person. I'm Elena, and I'm going to make sure your daughter gets better." But even as she spoke those comforting words, Elena's mind was racing with questions. How long? Could she hide them? What would happen when someone discovered what she was doing? And most importantly, what kind of life could these refugees hope to build in a world that saw them as enemies? For now, though, those questions could wait. A child's life hung in the balance, and Elena was determined to save her. Elena worked through the night, checking on Luna every few minutes. The little Zephyrian girl's fever had broken, but she was still weak. Her breathing was steady now, no longer the desperate gasps that had frightened Elena so much. The medicine was working exactly as it should. Vera sat in the corner, watching every move Elena made. The alien mother hadn't slept at all. Every time Elena approached her daughter, Vera's 4 hands would tense up, ready to protect her child if needed. Trust would take time to build. "She's going to be okay," Elena said softly, checking Luna's temperature again. "The worst is over." Vera's large eyes filled with tears that sparkled like diamonds. "I thought I had lost her," she whispered. "For 3 days, she grew sicker and sicker. I could do nothing but watch." Elena sat down across from Vera, keeping her voice gentle. "Tell me what happened. How did you end up here?" Vera looked down at her hands. Her story came out slowly, in pieces, like water dripping from a broken pipe. She had been married to a Zephyrian commander named Theron. Not a cruel man, she insisted, but a soldier who believed he was protecting his people. When the final battle came, Theron's ship was destroyed. He died believing his family would be taken care of by the Zephyrian government. But when the war ended, everything changed. The Zephyrian leadership fled to distant worlds, abandoning their people. Military families like Vera's were left behind with nothing. No food, no medicine, no protection. They called us traitors, Vera explained, her voice barely above a whisper. Said we should have died with our husbands. They took our homes, our savings, everything. Elena felt her anger rising. Not at Vera, but at the cruelty of abandoning families with children. What about Luna's sickness? It started 2 weeks ago, small fever at first. Then she stopped eating, stopped playing. Vera's voice cracked. I took her to every medical facility I could find. All were closed or destroyed. The ones still open refused to treat military families. Luna stirred in her sleep, making soft sounds. Both women turned to look at her. The child's color was much better now, her skin regaining its natural pale blue glow. I spent my last credits on passage to New Eden, Vera continued. Someone said humans had the medicine to cure Kepler's syndrome. I didn't know if it was true, but I had to try. Elena shook her head. You walked across the wilderness with a sick child? That's incredibly dangerous. She is my daughter, Vera said simply. A mother will walk through fire to save her child. Those words hit Elena hard. She had never had children of her own, but she understood that fierce, protective love. It was the same feeling that had made her risk everything to help these strangers. I studied your people before the war, Elena said carefully. Zephyrians are naturally peaceful, aren't you? Your society values knowledge over conflict. Vera nodded sadly. We were explorers, scientists, artists. The war happened because of resources, not hatred. Our worlds were dying and we needed new places to live. Your people had so much space, so many empty planets. We thought we could share. But the politicians on both sides made it about territory and pride, Elena finished. Yes. Fear made enemies of people who could have been friends. Elena got up to check on Luna again. The child was sleeping peacefully now, her tiny chest rising and falling normally. What did you do before the war? I was a botanist, Vera said with the first hint of pride Elena had heard in her voice. I specialized in soil enhancement and crop rotation. My research helped terraform 3 worlds for agriculture. Elena's eyes widened. That's incredible. Knowledge. Do you know how much that could help colonies like New Eden? What does it matter now? I am a refugee with no home and no future. Don't say that, Elena said firmly. You have skills that could revolutionize farming on frontier worlds. You could help feed thousands of people. Luna opened her eyes for the first time since arriving. They were the same dark color as her mother's, but filled with curiosity instead of fear. She looked around the room, taking in the strange surroundings. Mama? She said in a voice like tinkling bells. Vera was beside her daughter instantly, all 4 arms reaching to comfort the child. She spoke in the Zephyrian language, a series of musical tones that sounded like singing. Luna responded, then looked at Elena with interest rather than fear. She said something to her mother. She wants to know if you are the kind human who made her feel better, Vera translated. Elena knelt down beside the makeshift bed. Hello, Luna. I'm Elena. How are you feeling? The child studied Elena's face with remarkable intelligence. Then she smiled, the first smile Elena had seen from either of them. But their moment of peace was interrupted by a sound that made Elena's blood run cold. Military vehicles were approaching the farm, multiple engines coming closer. Vera heard them too. Her face went pale, and she gathered Luna protectively in her arms. They found us, she whispered. Elena's mind raced. The patrol wasn't scheduled. to return for another day. Something had changed. Maybe someone had reported unusual energy readings from her farm. Her medical equipment would show up on thermal scans. "Quick," Elena said, helping Vera to her feet. "There's a hidden room under the kitchen floor. It was built during the early colonial days for storm protection." She led them to a concealed trap door and helped them climb down into the small underground space. "Stay quiet no matter what you hear," she whispered. "I'll handle this." Elena closed the trap door and arranged furniture to hide it. Then she quickly gathered all the medical equipment and alien supplies, stuffing them into a closet. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure the soldiers would hear it. The vehicle stopped outside. Elena heard boots on her porch, then a firm, "Knock on her door, Dr. Rodriguez? This is Colonel Hayes. We need to speak with you." Elena took a deep breath and opened the door. 3 soldiers stood outside, their faces serious. Colonel Hayes was someone she knew from her research days. He had always been fair but strictly followed regulations. "Colonel Hayes," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What brings you out here so early?" "We received reports of unusual energy signatures from this location," he said, studying her face carefully. "Medical equipment running at odd hours. Are you conducting unauthorized research?" Elena's mouth felt dry. "Just routine maintenance on my old equipment, making sure everything stays in working order." "Mind if we take a look around?" Elena had no choice. "Of course not. Come in." As the soldiers entered her home, Elena prayed that Vera and Luna would stay hidden. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Discovery would mean arrest for her and probably death for the alien, mother and child. But as Colonel Hayes began his inspection, Elena noticed something in his eyes. A hesitation. A sadness that suggested he knew more than he was letting on. The question was, would he choose duty over compassion? Or was Elena about to discover that she wasn't the only human willing to risk everything to do what was right? Colonel Hayes walked slowly through Elena's house, his boots echoing on the wooden floors. His 2 soldiers followed behind, scanning every room with their equipment. Elena's heart hammered in her chest as she watched them get closer to the kitchen. "Your energy readings show medical equipment was running for several hours last night," Hayes said, not looking at Elena directly. "That's unusual for someone who's supposed to be retired from research." Elena forced herself to stay calm. "I was testing some old equipment, making sure it still works in case of emergencies." "What kind of emergencies?" one of the younger soldiers asked. "Farm accidents, animal injuries. Living out here alone, you never know when you might need medical supplies." Hayes stopped near the kitchen table, right above where Vera and Luna were hiding. Elena could barely breathe. Below the floorboards, a sick child and her desperate mother waited in darkness, trusting Elena to protect them. "Dr. Rodriguez," Hayes said quietly, "you know I've always respected your work. Your research on alien biology helped save human lives during the war." "Thank you, Colonel. That's why this is difficult for me." He turned to face her directly. "We've been tracking refugee movements across this sector. Families fleeing the aftermath of the war. Most are harmless civilians, but regulations require us to detain any aliens found in human space." Elena's mouth went dry. Did he know? Was this some kind of test? "I understand the regulations," she managed to say. Hayes nodded slowly. "The thing is, some of these families have children. Sick children who need medical help that's only available in human space. It puts people like me in a difficult position." One of the soldiers cleared his throat. "Colonel, should we check the basement?" "There is no basement," Elena said quickly. "This is a simple farmhouse." Hayes studied her face for a long moment. "Lieutenant Chen, take Rodriguez outside and check the perimeter. I want to finish the interior scan myself." Elena's blood turned to ice. If Hayes was alone in the house, he would definitely find the hidden room. "Colonel, I can show you around myself. There's really nothing to hide." "I'm sure there isn't," Hayes said, with a strange tone in his voice. but protocol requires a thorough search. Lieutenant Chen gestured for Elena to follow him outside. She had no choice but to comply, leaving Hayes alone in her house. As they walked to the porch, Elena listened desperately for any sounds from inside. If Vera or Luna made even the smallest noise, it would be over. "Dr. Rodriguez," Chen said quietly. "The colonel is a good man. He does what he thinks is right. I'm sure he does. Sometimes what's right isn't the same as what's legal." Elena looked at the young soldier with surprise. Was he trying to tell her something? Inside the house, they heard Hayes moving around, furniture being shifted, equipment beeping. Elena imagined him finding the trap door, discovering her guests, and felt sick with worry. But then Hayes appeared in the doorway. "House is clear," he announced. "No signs of unauthorized activity." Elena stared at him in shock. He had to have found the hidden room. "It was impossible to miss if you were really looking." "Are you sure, sir?" Chen asked. "Completely sure. Dr. Rodriguez is clearly using her old equipment for legitimate farm purposes. Nothing here violates any regulations." The other soldier frowned. But the energy readings suggested medical procedures were being performed. "Equipment testing can produce similar readings," Hayes said firmly. "Case closed." After the soldiers left, Elena stood on her porch for several minutes, trying to understand what had just happened. Hayes had definitely found the hidden room. There was no way he could have missed it. But he had chosen to report nothing unusual. She went back inside and carefully opened the trap door. Vera climbed out first, her face pale with fear. Luna came next, looking around with wide, curious eyes. "They're gone," Elena said softly. "We're safe." "The soldier found us," Vera whispered. "The older one. He opened the hiding place and looked right at us." Elena's heart stopped. "What happened?" He stared at Luna for a long time. Then he put his finger to his lips, like this. Vera demonstrated the universal gesture for silence. He closed the door and walked away. Elena sank into a chair, overwhelmed by what this meant. Colonel Hayes had knowingly protected enemy aliens. He had broken regulations to save a child's life. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena's life settled into a careful routine. She taught Vera basic English while learning some Zephyrian words herself. The language barriers slowly disappeared as they spent more time together. Luna recovered completely from her illness and revealed herself to be an extraordinarily bright child. She learned human customs with amazing speed and showed Elena things about plants that she had never known. The little girl could make flowers bloom just by touching them in a certain way. "Zephyrians have a natural connection to living things," Vera explained. "It's how we became such good farmers and gardeners." Elena watched Luna coax tomatoes to grow larger and ripen faster. This could revolutionize agriculture across human space. "If anyone was willing to learn from aliens," Vera said sadly. But Elena was starting to believe that more humans might be willing than Vera thought. She had been monitoring military communications and noticed something interesting. Refugee families were disappearing from tracking systems all across the frontier. Not being captured, just vanishing from records. "I think Colonel Hayes isn't the only one helping refugees," Elena told Vera one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching Luna play in the garden. The child was teaching human vegetables to grow in patterns that spelled out words in both languages. "You really think so?" Vera asked. "Energy signatures from farms across 3 sectors show the same patterns as mine. Medical equipment running at unusual hours. But no arrests are being made." Vera looked hopeful for the first time since arriving. "Maybe some humans understand that not all aliens are enemies. Maybe some humans understand that a sick child is just a sick child, no matter what species she is." Luna ran up to them, holding a flower that seemed to glow with its own light. "Look, Elena, I made it change colors." Elena took the flower carefully. It was still a normal plant, but somehow Luna had enhanced its natural beauty. "It's wonderful, sweetheart." "Can I show more people how to do this?" Luna asked innocently. Elena and Vera exchanged looks. The child had no idea how dangerous the world outside this farm could be. To Luna, humans and Zephyrians were just different types of people who could learn from each other. "Maybe someday," Elena said gently. But as she said it, she realized she was starting to believe it might actually be possible. If there were other humans like Colonel Hayes, other families willing to help refugees, maybe someday Luna could share her gifts openly. That night, Elena's communication system received an encrypted message. When she decoded it, the words made her heart race with hope and fear. "Safe house network expanding. Medical facility needed for refugee families. Are you interested in joining official underground railroad? Reply if willing to help more children like the one you're protecting." Elena stared at the message for a long time. Joining an underground network would be even more dangerous than hiding one family. But it would also mean saving more lives, helping more children, building bridges between species that politicians said were impossible. She looked at Vera sleeping peacefully in the guest room, then at Luna curled up with a stuffed animal Elena had given her. These two had changed her life completely. They had shown her that compassion was stronger than fear, that love transcended species barriers. Elena typed her reply, "Yes. How many children need help?" The response came immediately. "More than you can imagine. But with people like you, we can save them all." Elena's life changed completely after joining the underground network. Within a week, 3 more alien families arrived at her farm under cover of darkness. Each group carried the same desperate hope that had brought Vera and Luna to her door. The first family was a pair of elderly Zephyrians whose son had died in the war. They had been caring for their grandson, a boy about Luna's age who suffered from the same illness she had recovered from. Elena treated him successfully, watching as his fever broke and color returned to his pale skin. The second group included a Zephyrian father with twin daughters. His wife had died during the evacuation from their homeworld. The man was a skilled engineer who understood advanced water purification systems. His knowledge could help colonies across human space solve their clean water problems. The third family was the most heartbreaking. A single mother with a baby who couldn't have been more than 6 months old. The woman was barely alive herself, having given all her food and water to keep her infant healthy during their journey. Elena's small farmhouse became a hidden medical clinic. She worked around the clock, treating patients, teaching basic medical skills to the adults, and coordinating with other safe houses in the network. Her communication system buzzed constantly with coded messages about new arrivals and transfer schedules. Vera proved invaluable in helping the new refugees. She spoke their language and understood their fears. More importantly, she could explain to them that some humans were willing to help, that not everyone saw them as enemies. "Elena saved my daughter's life," Vera would tell each new arrival. "She risked everything for strangers. There are good people in every species." Luna became the unofficial ambassador between human and Zephyrian children. Her natural curiosity and lack of prejudice helped other young refugees feel safe. Elena often found her teaching human songs to alien children, or showing them how to make earth flowers change colors. But the network's success brought new dangers. Military patrols increased in their area. Intelligence reports suggested that High Command was becoming suspicious of the unusual refugee disappearance rates. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Elena was treating a sick child when her early warning system activated. Military vehicles were approaching fast, and there were too many to be a routine patrol. "Everyone to the bunker," Elena called out quietly. Over the weeks, she had expanded the hidden room under her kitchen into a proper underground shelter. It could hold 20 people comfortably with its own air filtration and basic supplies, but getting everyone down there without being seen would be nearly impossible. The vehicles stopped outside. Elena counted at least 6 trucks and what sounded like an entire platoon of soldiers. Through her window, she saw Colonel Hayes step out, but he wasn't leading this operation. A younger officer she didn't recognize was giving orders. "Surround the house," the new officer commanded. "Dr. Rodriguez is harboring enemy aliens in violation of federal law. We have authorization for a complete search and seizure." Elena's blood ran cold. Someone had betrayed the network, but there was no time to worry about that now. 15 refugees were counting on her to keep them safe. The knock on her door was loud and aggressive, nothing like the desperate tapping that had started this whole journey. "Dr. Elena Rodriguez, this is Lieutenant Jackson. Open the door immediately, or we will." Force entry. Elena took a deep breath and opened the door. The young lieutenant pushed past her without invitation, followed by a squad of armed soldiers. "Lieutenant Jackson," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady, "what's the meaning of this intrusion?" "We have evidence that you're operating an illegal refugee assistance network," Jackson announced. "Thermal imaging shows multiple heat signatures in this building." Elena's heart sank. Their advanced equipment could detect the people hiding below. There was no way to deny what was obvious. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said anyway. Jackson smiled coldly. "Really? Then you won't mind if we conduct a thorough search." He gestured to his soldiers, who began moving through the house with military precision. Elena noticed that Colonel Hayes stood apart from the group, his face troubled. "Search every room," Jackson ordered. "Check for hidden spaces, false walls, anything that could conceal enemy aliens." As the soldiers worked, Elena made a desperate decision. If she was going down, she would go down fighting for what was right. "Lieutenant Jackson," she said loudly, "what exactly is your plan when you find families with sick children? Are you going to arrest mothers for trying to save their babies?" "Enemy aliens have no rights in human space," Jackson replied. "They should have thought about their children before starting a war." "The war is over," Elena shot back. "These people are refugees, not soldiers. They're running from the same destruction that hurt our people." "They're enemies," Jackson insisted. "That child hiding downstairs is 5 years old," Elena continued, not caring anymore about concealing the truth. "She's never hurt anyone. Her only crime is being born the wrong species." Colonel Hayes stepped forward. "Lieutenant, perhaps we should discuss this situation privately." "There's nothing to discuss, Colonel," Jackson said. "Orders are orders." One of the soldiers called out from the kitchen. "Sir, I found something. Hidden entrance under the floor." Elena's heart broke as she heard quiet crying from below. The refugees knew they had been discovered. Families who had risked everything for a chance at life were about to be torn apart. "Bring them up," Jackson ordered. "Wait," Colonel Hayes said firmly. "I'm still the commanding officer in this sector. I want to see what we're dealing with before we make any arrests." Jackson looked annoyed but couldn't disobey a direct order from his superior. "Yes, sir." The soldiers opened the hidden entrance. Slowly, carefully, the refugees began to emerge. First came the elderly couple, helping each other climb the narrow stairs. Then the single father with his twin daughters. Finally, Vera appeared, carrying Luna in her arms. Elena watched Jackson's face as he saw the group of families. For just a moment, his expression softened. These weren't the dangerous enemy soldiers he had expected. They were grandparents, parents, and children who looked scared and tired. Luna, unafraid despite the tense situation, looked at Jackson with curious eyes. "Are you here to help too?" she asked in her musical voice. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena realized that this moment would determine not just the fate of these refugees, but the future of the entire network. Would humanity choose fear or compassion? Would they see enemies or families in need? Colonel Hayes stepped closer to Jackson. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "what exactly do you see when you look at these people?" Jackson stared at Luna, then at the other children clinging to their parents. Elena could see the internal battle playing out on his face. Everything depended on what this young soldier would choose to do next. Lieutenant Jackson stared at Luna for what felt like forever. The little Zephyrian girl looked back at him with pure innocence, still waiting for an answer to her simple question. Around them, 15 refugees held their breath, knowing their lives hung in the balance. "Are you here to help too?" Luna had asked, and those words seemed to echo in the silent room. Jackson's hand moved toward his communication device. Elena's heart sank, thinking he was about to call for prisoner transport. But instead, he slowly lowered his hand and knelt down to Luna's eye level. "What's your name, little one?" he asked quietly. "Luna," she replied with a shy smile. "What's yours?" "I'm David," Jackson said, his voice much softer than before. "Tell me, Luna, are you scared of me?" Luna looked at him thoughtfully, then shook her head. "Mama says scared feelings make people do mean things. But you have kind eyes like Elena." Elena watched in amazement as this hardened soldier's entire demeanor changed. Jackson looked around at the other refugees, really seeing them for the first time. Not as enemies, but as families. "Colonel Hayes," Jackson said, standing up slowly, "I need to speak with you privately." The two officers stepped outside, leaving Elena with the refugees and the remaining soldiers. The wait was torture. Elena could hear muffled voices through the door, but couldn't make out the words. Vera moved, closer to Elena. "What will happen to us?" she whispered. "I don't know," Elena admitted, "but Luna might have just saved all of us." One of the soldiers, a young woman who had been watching the refugees carefully, spoke up. "Ma'am, is it true these families walked hundreds of miles just to get medical help for their children?" Elena nodded. Many of them had nothing left. They risked everything because they heard humans might help save their kids. The soldier looked at the elderly Zephyrian couple who were comforting their grandson. "That's exactly what my grandmother would have done for me," she said quietly. After 20 minutes, the officers returned. Jackson's face was unreadable, but Colonel Hayes looked hopeful. "Dr. Rodriguez," Jackson announced formally, "after careful consideration of the situation, we have determined that you are operating a legitimate medical facility for humanitarian purposes." Elena's mouth fell open. "I'm sorry, what?" "The refugees present here are classified as medical patients under emergency care provisions," Hayes explained with the hint of a smile. "As such, they fall under international humanitarian law, not enemy alien regulations." Jackson nodded, though Elena could see this decision was difficult for him. "However, this facility will need to be properly registered and inspected to ensure it meets all safety standards." "Of course," Elena said, hardly believing what she was hearing. "Furthermore," Hayes continued, "given the specialized nature of interspecies medical care, this facility will require ongoing military protection to ensure the safety of all patients and staff." Elena realized what they were really saying. The ALE underground network was about to become an official operation, protected by the military instead of hiding from it. Over the next 3 months, Elena's farm transformed into something she had never imagined. The New Eden Refugee Medical Center became the first officially recognized facility for treating alien families. More buildings were constructed to house patients and their families during treatment. Vera became the head of agricultural research, teaching human farmers techniques that increased crop yields by 40%. Her knowledge helped colonies across 3 sectors solve food shortage problems that had plagued them for years. Luna started attending the colony's school, where she quickly became friends with human children. Her natural ability with plants fascinated her classmates, and soon she was teaching them how to grow better gardens. The sight of human and Zephyrian children playing together became normal in New Eden. The elderly Zephyrian engineer designed water purification systems that were installed in 12 colonies, providing clean drinking water to thousands of people. His twin granddaughters learned to speak perfect English and became interpreters for new refugee families. Lieutenant Jackson, who had almost arrested them all, became one of the center's strongest advocates. He personally escorted refugee families to safety and worked with Colonel Hayes to establish similar facilities on other worlds. "You know," Jackson told Elena one day, "I spent 2 years fighting Zephyrians in the war. I never once thought about the fact that they had families, children, grandparents. I only saw enemies." "What changed your mind?" Elena asked. "A little girl asked me if I was there to help," he said simply. "And I realized I wanted to be someone who could answer yes to that question." The network Elena had joined grew into an official refugee assistance program. Within a year, over 50 facilities were operating across human space, each one staffed by volunteers who believed that compassion was stronger than fear. Elena often thought about that first desperate knock on her door. Vera arriving with her dying daughter, begging for help from a stranger. Neither of them could have imagined how much would change from that single moment of trust. The war had ended with humanity's military victory, but peace was being built through individual acts of kindness. Every refugee family that found safety, every child that received medical care, every friendship that formed between former enemies added another brick to the foundation of a better future. One evening, Elena sat on her porch watching Luna teach a group of human and Zephyrian children how to make flowers glow in the dark. The children's laughter filled the air, a sound that transcended species barriers. Vera joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Do you ever regret opening your door that morning?" she asked. Elena smiled, thinking about everything they had built together. "Never. That knock changed my life in the best possible way." "Mine too," Vera said. "Luna has a future now because you saw her as a child who needed help, not as an enemy to be feared. She has a future because her mother was brave enough to trust a stranger," Elena replied. As the sun set over New Eden, Elena received a message on her communication device. Another refugee family was requesting help, this time from a different star system. They had heard about the place where humans and aliens worked together, where children could play without fear, where former enemies had become family. Elena typed her response immediately. "Safe passage guaranteed. How many children need medical care?" The cycle continued. One knock at a time, one family at a time, one act of compassion at a time. The alien widow's desperate plea for help had become a bridge between worlds, proving that the strongest humans were those who chose to protect the vulnerable, regardless of what species they happened to be. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't won on a battlefield. It was won in moments like these, when people chose love over fear, when they saw beyond differences to recognize the universal bonds that connected all living beings. Luna's laughter rang out across the farm as she successfully taught a human boy to make a flower change colors. 2 species that had been at war were now learning from each other, building something beautiful together, and it all started with a mother's love and a stranger's compassion, meeting at a simple farmhouse door.